All right, how is everyone doing today? Welcome to my channel. This channel is for educational purposes, and we uh, try to help you out with um, knowledge about great theories of everything, cosmologies, grand unified theories, all-encompassing theories, and also things like tour de forces and magnum opuses, like your your great work of uh, people who are my heroes because they stuck to their guns, and even though everybody thought they were a crackpot, they kept working on it, and before their life ended, they put out this great thing, and nobody has still paid attention to it, and they probably died penniless, but um, their work lives on, at least in me, and hopefully in you as well if this resonates with you. Um, we've done 300 or so videos on um, the ancient Egyptian tree of life, especially the Menu approach, and also almost 600 videos on the reciprocal system of theory from Dewey B. Larson. My favorite of all time, theory of everything. He unites all of the different fields of science, the different major fields of science, as well as uniting science with religion. And that's kind of where we're at now, is we're looking at the religion side of it. This is called the Reciprocal Church. Today is our 270th video on the Reciprocal Church, where we try to amass as many really good things that you can believe in, things that you can test, things that you can verify, things that often have equations, um, things that have a numinous aspect, a spiritual aspect, something that allows you to feel reverence, to get closer to your conception of the divine. And we've looked at things like ecstatic music, um, and we've looked at intense endurance exercise, and we've looked at deep states of meditation to bring upon exotic and rarefied states of consciousness. We're going to take a deep dive into a book called Temple of Man by Schwaller de Lubitz that gets into some more sacred geometry and also sacred mathematics. We might dabble a little bit into some of the stars, some astrology and astronomy, and some more music theory is coming, and probably quite a few other things that we haven't that I haven't thought of, at least right now at this moment. And we are really trying to put these sources together because we see an exigent need for it, because we see the writing on the wall, and the writing on the wall is that all of the Western religions are about to crash and burn because they just don't stand up to scrutiny. The evidence against them is beginning to overwhelm them. And this is particularly true of the New Testament. And so that's what we're looking at here with this New Testament decode. We've been looking at this for the last couple months, and different sources, but so the New Testament is really, I think there are really five or more, five big ones, major Western religions: Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and then also Satanism and atheism or scientism. And when you start to question the New Testament, you start to question Christianity and its kind of evil twin, Satanism. Satanism pretty much is based on the New Testament. In the Old Testament, there's nary a mention of Satan, and even when there is, it's not the Satan that we associate. Not the all-powerful. It's just a human being who is like an obstacle or um, an impediment. Now, a lot of Christians today think that we're talking about Moloch or Baal. These were competing gods to Yahweh. All three of them, Yahweh, Baal, and Moloch, are all gods with a small g. They are powerful beings who are not gods. They are much more powerful than the average person for whatever reason, probably because of knowledge, an understanding of what is the actual score and what's going on, but possibly because of some type of advanced civilization. Who knows? But if you look at the Old Testament, the God with a capital G only lasts for about the first chapter of Genesis, and up until day through day 6 of the creation, and then as soon as God takes a Sabbath day, he is replaced, or he, she, it, whatever, is replaced by Yahweh, or I think maybe there's a couple other names, but and that Yahweh character is not God with a capital G, anyway. So talking about Moloch and Baal like they're Satan is not. That's not right. Satan is coming straight out of the New Testament, along with later works like Milton's Paradise Lost and Dante's Inferno, but in particular Hollywood movies and Hollywood, productions are giving us our understanding of Satanism. But the thing about Satanism is that it's a reflection of Christianity. So if you get rid of the Christianity, you also get rid of the Satanism, because Satanism is a reaction to Christianity. They are worshiping these bad things. They are following the New Testament, which can be read multiple ways, because they hate Christians. And so if they're not Christians, Satanism's out of business. It's just like, you're fighting cancer, but if you actually find the cure to cancer, then you're out of a job. If you're fighting racism and then suddenly there's no racism, then you're out of a job, because your whole thing is the racism grift. So that's why, you never get rid of cancer. You never get rid of racism, because otherwise, you would be out of a job. So it's the same kind of thing. Anyway, the major hypothesis that debunks the New Testament is that it was not written by a bunch of semi-literate Palestinian laborers who happen to be followers of some Jesus character. It was written by the palace at Rome, Caesar's palace, the emperors of Rome and their lackeys and friends and relatives. And in particular, it was written by the Flavian emperors, that is Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian, 69 to 96 AD. They wrote the Gospels and backdated them by 40 years. And then they wrote a book called War of the Jews by an author named Josephus, who Christians think is their corroborating evidence of the existence of Jesus, but it was actually a pseudonym of somebody that worked for the Romans. Josephus actually says in his autobiography, if you believe that he existed, he even does say that he was a insider to the Roman um, Caesars, and that he lived at the court of the Caesars in Rome, which is where he wrote Wars of the Jews from. And he was an adopted member of their family. He was known as Flavius Josephus, one of the Flavians of the Flavian dynasty of Caesars. And so that really puts a dent into you believing that when Josephus mentions the existence of Jesus, that it has some type of historical weight. This is all propaganda. I think that Christians are very naive about taking their document as the word of God, like as if this is some kind of history. Nothing that was written at that time was intended to be taken seriously. It's all propaganda. Everything that was written in the first century was written under the auspices of the Roman emperors. They were the only people that had the resources to even write and read. But not only that, but to publish something and to distribute something. They had a monopoly over all these things. So don't let some Christian apologists tell you that there's still 5,000 remaining copies of the Gospels, still 2,000 years later intact. 5,000? Do you think a bunch of fishermen and maybe a doctor living in Palestine are going to be able to produce 5,000 copies of something, of anything? Especially something written in Greek. So it's absurd. The whole Christianity, the whole thing that Christianity is based on is that there isn't a better explanation. They're all like, oh, well, Occam's razor, but there is no better explanation. So we're going to go with this virgin birth and this bodily resurrection, No, there is a better explanation. It's that the Romans did it. It was a psychological operation from the Roman Caesars, just like any other psychological operation that all of you Anons and 17 followers and truthers are constantly talking about, but apparently you can't apply it to the thing that is most dear to you. I have admiration for you in many ways, but in this capacity, you are being total hypocrites. Maybe you're just afraid. Your faith isn't strong enough. Your faith is definitely not strong enough to withstand a blow from the Romans on this court. But the thing is that the Romans are still mocking you for this. That's what this is. It is a mean-spirited, grim, brutal, pornographic Gospels and New Testament in general, if you know how to read it, and they're putting it right in your face and you're praising it and worshiping it. But if you actually understood what it was about, but you won't, because your faith is not strong enough to leave me on. Instead, you just turn me off. And other people that are also trying to transmit this. We are looking at a book from a guy named Michael Menescotts, and his new book that came out about 6 months ago is called Christianity's Origins as a Flavian Secrecy Cult. And he's at least, the fifth author in the last 25 years to put a book out, positing that the Flavian Caesars wrote the New Testament, or at least in his case, the Gospels. He has questions about Paul still. But what he does is he makes a graph. You can get out your own graph paper and follow along if you'd like. Although that might not apply today because he's a little bit off topic here for today's reading. But what he does in general is he takes the book of Luke, the third gospel, and he puts it on the vertical axis, chapters 1 through 24. 1 at the bottom, 24 at the top. Then he takes Josephus's book called Wars of the Jews, and he graphs that, marks that out on the horizontal axis, paragraphs 1 through 694. Whenever he finds a correspondence between those two works, again, both written by the same sources, he puts a dot there, plots that point, and when he gets done, he has found 250 parallels just in the book of Luke. And not only that, but they make a pattern that is not noise. It's not a random pattern. It is 5 letters in Latin. Latin is the language of the Roman Caesars. I mean, they know Greek, but Latin is their own thing. And certainly, no Palestinian or Judean is going to be knowing any Latin. A very, very small percentage of them knew Greek. Very, very few wrote in Greek or read in Greek, even if they spoke it. But the language of the people in Palestine at that time was Aramaic. So even when you're just reading it, you're reading a translation of the Aramaic words that Jesus is supposed to have said, translated into Greek, and then translated into Latin, and then translated into English. But you take it seriously, like it's the gospel, like there's nothing problematic about this text. But if you read something like that from any other source, you would immediately start digging on it. You would immediately start figuring out what's wrong with it. You would be very critical of it. But for some reason, you are totally uncritical about the Gospels. And it's quite shameful, actually. And it's a limited hangout, and it's going to cost you. It's going to cost the whole movement if you don't get it straightened out. That's why I'm talking to you about it right now. So anyway, APTVS are the letters that are formed when you plot out all the points from the book of Luke. That, I believe, stands for Arius Piso Titus Vespasianus. But it could be something else. But the bottom line is that the Romans actually, not only did they write the Gospels, in particular the Gospel of Luke, but they signed their name to it. Isn't that enough for you? Enough for you. You see a 17. Oh, 12 plus 5 is 17. That's enough for you. You see a couple 17s and that's enough for you. But they actually signed their name to the book of Luke through 250 supposedly random connections between the Gospels and the Josephus book, War of the Jews, and doesn't make a dent. No comment. It doesn't even. It's just ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Okay, so in this section here, Menescotts is talking about the Essenes. And the Essenes were a group of people who he doesn't think existed, and I don't either. And the reason why he doesn't think but they were supposed to be possibly the kind of the Jewish sect that Jesus was originally part of, because they were very devout and they were ascetic. They believed in like vegetarianism and celibacy and, living on, what John the Baptist was living on, wild honey and whatever it was. And, but the only 3 people in history who ever referred to the Essenes were Josephus, who was a family member of the Roman emperors, by adoption. Source 2 was Philo of Alexandria, who was also a family member. He was Jewish, but he was a family member of the Flavians. His nephew Tiberius eventually became he became a defector, and he fought alongside the Romans, alongside Titus. Titus and Vespasian were originally generals in the Roman army before they became emperors. And he also had, he was also kind of shared a wife with Titus. Titus was having an affair with Tiberius, Alexander's wife. Now, Philo and Tiberius were like, the Alexanders were like the richest, one of the richest families in the entire Roman Empire. So he was the second person to have corroborated the existence of the Essenes, or to even have described the Essenes. And then the third person is Pliny the Elder, who is another Roman royal who was intimately connected with Emperor Titus. So Menescot goes on, the third source for the Essene cult is Pliny the Elder, who is the uncle of Pliny the Younger, who describes how he had a close relationship with Emperor Vespasian, Titus's father, and an incredible career, leading to him commanding the entirety of Vespasian's imperial navy. I don't believe empirical is the right word there. We can be sure he continued a relationship with the Flavians after Vespasian's death, since he dedicates his biggest work to Titus's younger brother, Emperor Domitian. Now, Domitian is a curious character. He's Titus's younger brother, Vespasian's son, but I'm not completely sure that he was in on the ruse to write this Gospels for the Romans. I didn't mention, but the Romans had not only the method of operation and the resources and the opportunity, but they also had the motive to write this, because they had just gotten done fighting with a long war against the Jews. Really, when you think about it, like 150-year-long war against the Jews, and they wanted to try to mellow them out because they were so zealous. They would fight to the death over every little aspect of their little separatist religion. Their monotheism, their graven images, their circumcision, their food, dietary cleanliness laws, and the Romans wanted you to assimilate to their empire, and the Jews in Judea were not doing that. Instead, they were rebelling left and right, insurrecting left and right, and culminating in this war of the Jews from 66 to 73 AD. So the Romans attempted to combat that through wartime propaganda, which is the Gospels. They put together this character named Jesus, who was a Jewish hero, and even a Jewish savior who believed in turning the other cheek and in rendering what unto Caesar what is Caesar's, into walking an extra mile with the Roman soldier's backpack, into claiming that the Roman slave owner has the greatest faith in all of Judea, and identifies as the Prince of Peace. That's the kind of Jew that the Romans wanted. The Romans were very tired of the Jew who, his brother just got murdered, and he's like saying, bring it on, you bring it on to me, because, if you're not going to let me do my, whatever ritual, my Passover ritual, or, then you're going to have to kill me over it. And the Romans had hundreds of nations under their empire, and they didn't have the resources to to really, the Jews were just high maintenance for them. And they wanted to stop it. And eventually, I believe with the writings of Paul, which came later instead of earlier than the Gospels, they started targeting Christianity toward Gentiles under the Roman, that were Roman, like the slaves and the soldiers especially. So anyway, we just got to Domitian, who succeeded Titus in 81 AD as the emperor. Indeed, some historians see enough stylistic content similarities between what little is known of Titus's lost writings and Pliny's writings, Pliny the Elder's writings, to conclude that Pliny's writings draw on those of Titus. That's rather interesting. I wish he would provide a citation for that. Another thing I didn't really mention is what the Romans did is they backdated the story of Jesus by 40 years, and then they wrote the story of Josephus's history. And like the things that Jesus predicts or prophecies are going to happen in the Gospels actually come true in Josephus's book, War of the Jews. And but in a very mocking and mean-spirited way quite often. So Jesus will predict something in a symbolic manner or like a parable, and then it will come true literally. Titus will mostly Titus will fulfill the prophecy. So you would have to come to the conclusion that Titus is the second coming of Jesus. But not only that, but the place where Jesus is at, where he makes the prediction, is the exact same place where Titus is at, where he fulfills the prediction. And the time that Jesus makes the prophecy is often exactly 40 years to the day and sometimes to the hour of the time that Titus fulfills it. And that's just one of the many different patterns of parallels between these two books. Okay. In summary, all other documents discussing the Essenes are secondary sources from later centuries and do not claim first-hand knowledge. There are no contemporary writings or Jewish records from the 1st century or earlier suggesting that it ever existed. So all we have is 3 sources describing the Essenes, all intimately connected with Emperor Titus, and a 19th century team whose claim that they discovered an Essene settlement turned out to be incorrect. But there's more. The very nature of the Jewish Essene sect itself, described by 2 of the 3 sources, is so implausible that we should be doubting it anyway. Neglecting that Jewish war suggests that there had been a second Essene sect, the original sources claim that the Essene existed with no women or children, not for years or decades, but for thousands of ages. Thanks apparently to the men consistently adopting younger men from supposedly available pool of adoptees. Not only is this frankly impossible, but is incompatible with being Jewish, which is a characteristic passed down in the female bloodline. Again, neglecting the supposed second type of Essene sect, according to the original sources, they were so frugal they only ate 1 plate per meal and 1 food per plate, and did not sacrifice animals. Again, not only would such an implausible diet cause acute ill health, but because Passover involves 2 foods, unleavened bread and lamb, and sacrificing an animal, this is also incompatible with being Jewish. I agree with the second half of what he says, and I totally disagree with the first half. You can actually live a very healthy life eating 1 kind of food per meal, and it says 1 foodstuff per meal and 1 plate per meal. You might have to eat more than 1 plate per meal, but you can survive and thrive on 1 food. I explain that in several other videos that I've done, and you can look those up. I'm sure I'll do more videos, and if you don't believe me, then you can watch me on other videos under the Cardiomaniac playlist, where I perform feats of endurance on that said diet that are at least hard to achieve for a human being. So, whilst it is true that one of the three sources, Jewish War, suggests that there was a second type of Essene cult in which women, children, marriage, and a more permissive lifestyle was allowed, what I'm showing here is that the accounts of the more restrictive version are so implausible as to cast further doubt on the whole idea that the Essene existed, leaving it far more plausible that the whole thing was a Roman government propaganda, aiming to persuade their greatest enemy, the Jews, to adopt a more pious cultural model, which would indirectly induce them to cease to be Jews. Alrighty. Okay, summary of reasons to think that the Roman government invented the idea of a Jewish sect called the Essene. 1, there are no surviving writings, buildings, tombs, etc., or any physical evidence for the existence of the Essene. The idea that Qumran was Essene being laughable for the reasons set out on the previous page. Interesting, because another author that does have the Flavian idea disputes this. His name is Henry Davis in his book Creating Christianity. So we'll have them butt heads here at some point. Number 2, there are only 3 surviving sources claiming firsthand knowledge that these scenes existed: Plato, Philo, Pliny the Elder, and Josephus. All 3 are intimately connected with the Roman government. 3, the main source, Josephus, can be demonstrated to be consistently lying, and he is also the only person ever recorded as claiming to have been a member of the Essenes. Josephus, in his history, actually talks about what he calls like the Sabbatean River, which is a river that only flows on Sundays, or maybe it stops flowing on Sundays. One of the two. But are you serious? Okay. 4, the only document identifying a specific location that the Essene existed is, again, Jewish War by Josephus, written just after that very location, Jerusalem, was conveniently leveled and utterly destroyed as to leave no trace of habitation. And 5, the nature of this third Jewish sect is impossible. Generations of people without involving children. Implausible. Generations of men avoiding women. And